Hi, this is Rebecca, and we are, how many days? 6 days away from leaving for Michelle's top surgery. And I'm seriously behind on making videos, which many of you have lovingly pointed out. And I thought I'd start today talking about just something that I've been thinking about more as we're getting closer, about how normal it's starting to feel that Michelle is going to have this surgery. And I think that part of my hesitation about making videos recently has been that I've come to this really wonderful place of acceptance that this is the way that her body should be. And it's almost like if I have to go back in time to before we began this idea of making movies in order to kind of remember how upset I was and how confused I was, and now it just feels more like fact. And I've been feeling kind of this resistance to getting into the sad feelings because that's not where I am right now. Right now I'm really excited to get on that plane, and we just got Michelle's labs back from her blood work and everything's great and we're set to go for surgery, and I'm so excited for her. And so talking about some of my hesitations feels a little bit inauthentic right now because I'm not feeling that so profoundly in me. But about a week ago, we had some friends come over, and they came over specifically to help me put together a memory book. And the memory book is a photo collage that Michelle took a bunch of photos with her friend who is a photographer of Michelle topless all around our house, posing in different ways as sort of a way to commemorate what her body looked like before the surgery, which I think is just the nicest thing ever since I'm so attached to her breasts. And now I have all these hundreds of photographs of Michelle in various places in our home, looking terribly hot. And so our friend came over with a lot of those proofs to help me put together a project. And looking at all those pictures, I think what I got sad about the most, I'm so happy to get it, but also this sort of like melancholy about losing. It doesn't even feel like they're her breasts now. It feels like I'm losing my breasts. And I think this is in part because I never had very big boobs. And this is kind of what I keep thinking about as this gets closer, is that I always wanted to have breasts. When I was a little girl, I remember sitting with my mom in the bathtub and being in the bubbles and looking at her and, a little girl with big boobs right in front of me. And my mom was always very full-chested. And I remember her telling me that when I was a grown woman, I would get to have big brown breasts like that. And I was so excited about having big breasts like that. And all throughout my young teens and tweens, I was this little skinny kid, and I always knew that one day I would get to have that body, that really female body. And it never happened. And I thought that it would happen at 12, and I thought it'd be when I started my period, and then I thought it would be later, and it just never really got to happen. And so the first relationship I was in with a woman in college, she also had a beautiful round chest, and even in that relationship, she didn't want me to have any contact with her breasts. And later, it turned out that that particular girlfriend transitioned into, did a full transition into being male identified and actually had top surgery. So I feel like I've already kind of lost the first boobs that I got to have, like my first boobs on my first girlfriend when I came out. And so it's interesting getting to this point in relationship with Michelle and also feeling like I finally got to have boobs and they're being taken away again, and that sucks. And I'm realizing as we get closer to this surgery that it does feel like I'm losing my boobs, not hers, that in some ways these never really belong to her and that it doesn't really make any sense for her to have them. So that's part of my process right now. It's just kind of the mourning of something that I don't have, thought I would get, and don't get to have again. Well, that's kind of complicated by the fact this week that we're having more contact with our families about Michelle's surgery, and in some ways I feel like my parents have been through this before because that first girlfriend of mine transitioned. That person transitioned when we weren't together, so he and I were years after our relationship. But my family got to be really supportive of me and this other person during his transition. And so they got to learn all the language and got to learn about testosterone and T. They got to learn about top surgery and he pronouns. And they really went through this process of discovery about being not one of the binary genders from kind of a distance while loving this person, but not having to contend with the fact that I was in a relationship with them. And so at this point in Michelle and my process, my family kind of knows all the words to use and knows how to show up and be supportive and have really done a lot of the work. And in the past couple of weeks, Michelle's had this experience of talking to her mom, and I got to be there for that. And also getting to engage with her father and her brother and other people in her family. And it's just hard. It's hard because they're on the ground floor. Maybe this is the first time they've heard about top surgery, and for some of them this is just so confusing. It just doesn't make any sense to them. They have no framework for this. And so we have these two different families who both love us so much, and one side of the family seems like they're really getting it, and the other side of the family is each in their own process of learning it. And some people are able to really show up in some ways and others aren't, and it's really painful for me to be the partner and to not be able to change their responses, to make them see how important this is. And so I'm sad and supportive of their process too. Like, as much as we have to go through a process, Michelle's process, they have to go through their own process. And I'm a therapist. I know that you can't speed up anybody's process for them. But in some ways, I can't wait for this to be 10 years behind us and for us to all look back on this and say, like, how funny this was. We made such a big deal out of something that at the end was really just a very small thing. And how do we hold now that this is both a very large, momentous, joyous, confusing, exciting event with all these concerns and difficulties, and then also hold on to the fact that later this is just going to be one piece of the process of this ever-evolving self. I guess I want to close by something I keep coming back to in my own head. I had a really wonderful talk with my father about love and about bodies and about change. And he mentioned that he and my mom fell in love when he was in his late 20s and my mom was 20 years old. And they've loved each other for 35 years almost now. And he was talking with me about what it's like to be with someone from age 20 to age 55. And to sit with someone and be with someone when everything about them develops and changes. And he was like, I really fell in love with 20-year-old Arlene and her beautiful 20-year-old body, and I'm still in love with her 55-year-old body, but it is a really, really different body. And the only thing that's really constant about loving someone is how do we have to hold on to them and how we get to hold on to them as we change. And so she's changed and I've changed and our love has grown deeper, but certainly we're not in the same bodies, mine or hers, that we used to be. And thinking about that is kind of neat, sitting with Michelle and being in this place where, we're in these not super young, but like medium young bodies, and that this big change is going to occur, and then I hope that I get to have her in my life for another 30 years, and she gets to see all these miraculous ways that my body will change and age, and that when I'm in my 60s and hopefully in my 90s, we'll laugh about what it was like to love my 30-year-old body, and how much more important it is to be seeing each other in these different kinds of aged bodies, and how love continues through that. So I'm thinking a lot about that, connecting to that. And I'll see you soon.